I will be talking about what felt like the worst day of my life of traveling. Have any of you bought a connecting flight ticket before? Well, they suck. I'm gonna talk about how I was stuck in Mexico City for 6 hours. So now that you know a little bit of my speech, I will talk about how I missed our connecting flight, and then I will talk about how we stayed at the airport for 6 hours. And lastly, I will talk about arriving to Tijuana, Mexico, and having to wait another hour at US Border Customs. So now that you know a little bit about that, let's get in. So we made a trip to Oaxaca, Mexico in January of 2019. And it was an amazing trip. There was no issues at all. However, when we were trying to get back home, we thought it was gonna be a very smooth trip, and it wasn't like that at all. So we arrived to the airport in Oaxaca, and when I tell you, this was probably the smallest airport I've ever been to. It was probably like 2 boarding gates, and that was it. So our plane arrives, and we go to Mexico City, because that's where our connecting flight is, and that flight is about like an hour and 30 minutes, and so it's just a very chill flight. And so we arrive, and as soon as we arrive, my dad says, I need to use the restroom. And my mom and I are like, no, like don't go to the bathroom right now, just hold it till we get to the plane. So my dad proceeds to go to the bathroom, and of course he comes out, and as we walk to the boarding gate to go to Tijuana, Mexico, we miss our connecting flight. And we were mad at this point. My mom and I were both so mad at my dad. And we blamed him for a little bit, saying like, you're the reason why we're not going home faster. And I was supposed to arrive in Tijuana at 8 p.m., but I ended up arriving there at 1 a.m. instead. So afterwards, I will talk about receiving unpleasant news. So whenever you're buying a ticket, I think you best want to avoid a connecting flight because they suck and you have layovers of like 2 hours or like more. So we had no idea that we would be encountering a 6-hour layover in Mexico City. And so when we noticed that the boarding gates were closed, we panicked and we immediately like went to the client services. And we were like, hey, what is gonna happen with our tickets? Are you gonna refund us? Are you gonna give us a new ticket? And so this really sucked. And then they told us, yes, we actually do have a next flight ticket, and it's in 6 hours though. So that really sucked. And I remember very vividly that everyone was yelling because there was multiple people trying to get onto that connecting flight, and it turned out that the first flight was actually a couple minutes late. That's why we missed our connecting flight. So lastly, I will tell you what felt like the cherry on top of this worst day. We arrived at Tijuana, Mexico, and previously before that, we had another layover in Hermosillo, and that layover was due to bad weather. So that really sucked, and it was like an hour stuck on the plane. And afterwards, this was just my breaking point. I had like swollen feet and was just like over it. So we finally get to the airport in Tijuana, and we have to wait another hour to get home. And that's pretty much it. So in my speech I talked about missing our connecting flight, our 6-hour layover in Mexico City, and then I talked about the US Border Customs. And remember, when buying a flight ticket next time, try to avoid connecting flights. Thank you.